Hi, my name is Ken Schwartz of Precise Sharpening, and today I'm going to be introducing another one of the Nubatama stones. This stone is the 5,000 grit bamboo Nubatama stone. As you can see on the box, 5,000 Nubatama in the bamboo series. So what I'm going to be doing with this is first testing porosity. Not quite sure how this stone will be, this being my first attempt at it. It does initially feel a lot like the 4,000 and 6,000 Nubatama stones. I thought that the 5,000 would be an interesting addition to the series, just to give a very complete choice, since we do have both the 4,000 and 6,000 Nubatama Bamboo as well as Nubatama Ume or Plum series stones. So I'm going to be doing a couple knives, and I'll start talking about them as I get the porosity test going. So let's start off and spray a little water on and see how quickly it absorbs. It's a fairly slow rate of absorption. So let's put a little water on there and see how it holds. And then we'll probably add a bit more water. So yeah, this is very much of a splash and go sort of stone. Very slow absorption. So I'm going to be doing a few different knives with this and a bit of a variety. So the first knife is a Blazen, and it's a sujihiki. It's a 270 millimeter. It's a powdered steel. The next knife is a carbon steel nakiri. Got this a long time ago. It's a particularly thin nakiri. No name. The fit and finish on it is a bit rough. So I'm not, as is somewhat typical of knives that are hand forged. You can see all the forging, the hammering marks all over. You can see in particular along here something very common and characteristic of this type of knife, which is that as the hammer hit right behind the edge, you sometimes get a bit more of a depression right behind there. So, and then also as part of doing this whole series, I also like to provide a little education in sharpening. And so what we're going to be doing is with a stainless steel knife. This is the Tojiro bread knife. And I'm going to demonstrate how one sharpens a serrated edge on this stone as well. So again, it's a 5,000 grit stone. Just looking at it, we can see that the water absorption does occur, but it occurs at a very slow rate. So let's get started on this, and we can start out with the powdered steel knife. And the knife is in fairly good shape as is, so this is primarily going to be used more or less to touch up the edge. So let's get going on it, see how this stone reacts to a powdered steel. Okay, so this is a pretty hard stone. Let's let this run just a little bit, see what kind of impressions we get. Okay, we are getting some metal swarf showing up. It's not cutting very fast. It has a fairly hard feel about it. We are seeing some swarf in here. It's very fine swarf, very fine metal swarf. This seems to have the hardness pretty much of in the range of like a 5,000 grit Shapton, a bit more porosity. a lot more feedback than the 5000 Shapton. It's considerably harder than, let's say, a 5000 Chocera stone. I'm pressing fairly firmly. There is no danger whatsoever of cutting into the stone, so edge leading and trailing strokes, not a problem at all with the stone. We'll see if this has similar characteristics when we deal with the carbon steels next. So we can see it's a shiny edge. Let's work the other side a bit. Again, very slow water absorption, so this is very much a pure splash and go sort of stone. It has a hardness very similar to the 1000 speckled Ume in either the hard or extra hard grit, kind of in between those two. So this would be a very nice combination to use with that stone, perhaps with an intermediate stone, at least for the powdered steel from what I'm seeing at this point. Starting to get a little bit of mud density. So perhaps a little bit more than one might see with the Shapton. So it is producing some degree of mud. The metal swarf is microscopic. I can feel it's starting to get a good bit sharper, so I'm going to run it just a little bit longer. Yeah, switch sides. And pretty much like all of the Nubatama series of stones, the stone does come out of the box quite flat. Okay. Keep feeling like I'm almost done with it, but then every time I feel it, it keeps getting a little bit sharper. I think that's an interesting skill to develop, to get a sense of touch for sharpness. This is particularly useful for feeling that extra bump in sharpness that one gets preceding burr formation. So you can see I'm letting the mud get kind of thick here. Not adding a lot of water to it at all. Okay, let's clean it off and see what we've got here. Okay, let's look this over a bit. Okay, so very uniform. It's clearly, I don't know if I can catch it just right, but it's clearly a mirror finish along the very edge, not the area behind, but the very edge. Very consistent. So, let's see what it cuts like. Well, obviously, slice cuts are easy. Seems to be push cutting fairly far out. I would say, yeah, right around there. Something in the order of about 1.5 inches or so out. So that's quite nice. All right. I think we've got very good effect on powdered steel. Now let's try it on carbon steel. And I'm going to go with a sort of a zero grind. Let me show you what this looks like beforehand. Just want to see if it develops any contrast or not. I'm not expecting it to, but it would be a pleasant surprise if it does. And very hard, very smooth. Has the sort of smooth feel of a Chocera 5K, but a good bit harder. Quite a bit harder than that. And I'm pressing fairly firmly, at least initially here. Again, porosity, not a very porous stone, so it holds its water very much like a polishing stone, like a natural polishing stone. Okay, let's see. Oh, quite nice. It is developing some contrast. Okay, let's take a look at that. Okay, so we are seeing a nice bit of contrast between the soft and the hard steel, flattening out. We've been doing it all on one side, and I do feel a very slight degree of burr on the other side. So let's work the other side now for a bit. I'm going to do a few lateral strokes without much pressure. So I do have burr generation at 5,000 with moderate pressure. Okay, that pretty much is taking care of the burr. Maybe a slight bit of roll over to the other side. So it seems to cut carbon steel a little bit faster than it does the powdered steel, which is expected. This is probably a white steel, thin nakiri. My guess. I'm not 100% sure of that. So the white steel does tend to sharpen more quickly than the powdered metal steels. Okay, a little bit more. Slightly steeper angle. I want to call that a micro bevel. And let's see how this looks and how it works. So yeah, we do have a good bit of contrast. So this stone may turn out to be quite the surprise, a good follow-up if one wishes to stick with synthetic stones, to go on past 2 or 3K bamboo series stone and follow it up with this stone. Let's get a little sense of edge performance as well. Alright, so slice cutting is effortless, push cutting, close in, effortless. One-inch push cuts are pretty straightforward with this. Perhaps as much as 2-inch push cutting. So exceptional performance. Very easy knife to sharpen to begin with because of its thin geometry, but the contrast enhancement, the finish on the core steel is pretty consistently shiny sort of finish. Slight bit of haze. This stone is turning out to be a bit of a pleasant surprise for a carbon steel. I was expecting it to be a little less versatile than this. Alright, so let's do this. Let's go, and this should be an interesting exercise. I've been asked so many times, how does one go about sharpening a serrated edge? This Tojiro knife holds its edge exceptionally well. If you look at the serrations on here, you'll see that they're wavy rather than sharp, pointy, or saw-like serrations, which make it particularly easy to sharpen. And the back is essentially flat. So the two things that you want to do is, if this were a normal knife, you might find that right about there is where you get it to catch. So you don't sharpen it like this, but what you do is you maintain that same angle, but along the side. So what you do is you use the corner of the stone, and that angle from here to here is the angle that you maintain. And what you do is you follow each serration and go along the top like this. And because it's a wavy serration without a single point along the top, this edge follows the curve very nicely for the individual serrations. And it doesn't particularly harm the stone, so you can follow it a bit more deeply like this. But you're maintaining a constant angle. And again. All right. Now, once you've done that, what you can do is, on the opposite side of the knife, as I said, it's a flat knife, you lay it down flat on the stone and bring it up just ever so slightly so you're not scratching the whole knife. And you lightly abrade that side of the knife a couple times to remove any burr that may have formed in the process. Okay, and let's see how this worked out. Again, this was just for a touch-up, because the knife has remained pretty sharp for a pretty long time. I've been actually quite impressed with the edge retention characteristic. I use it strictly as a bread knife, although one could in a pinch use it as a general slicer as well. So let's see how this cuts a piece of paper. Alright. So slice cutting, and you can hear the serrations as we go across. Alright. Now let's see. Push cutting. Not quite. But pretty close to push cutting with a serrated blade, which is, as it catches in between the individual serrations, and you go down a single serration. So quite nice. This will make see-through slices of pound cake extremely sharp. So certainly this 5,000 grit stone, 5,000 Nubatama Bamboo, would certainly make an excellent knife for both stainless steel and for doing things such as serrated edges. This is an excellent touch-up stone. Hope you have a chance to enjoy it, and thank you very much for your time and attention.